So in yesterday's lesson we looked at Act 2, Scene 5. We didn't look at any particular language elements in detail. We focused instead upon the contrasting characters of the nurse and Juliet. So to start today's lesson, I've created a slide for you here which allows you a quick read through, a quick recap of the nurse and Juliet and just how different they are really. The only thing that really links them is the fact that they have replaced the other one's mother or the other one's daughter. And whilst that has obviously created a very strong relationship between the two, in everything else they are very far apart. Okay, so you haven't got to do any writing for this screen. I just want you to read through the list for the nurse, the list for Juliet, and think about those ways in which they are completely different or they are similar. It's quite interesting, both being women and the nurse being of a lower social position, they were both expected to obey. As it happens, they're both obeying Lord and Lady Capulet, but that's just because they are the nurse's employers. But neither of these women were expected by society to have a choice, to have an opinion. What society expected of them was, in the case of the nurse, to do as her employers tell her, and in the case of Juliet, to do as her parents tell her. So neither of them really are expected or granted freedom by the world in which they lived. Right, here we go then. The last scene of Act 2 starts off with Friar Lawrence and Romeo in the Friar Lawrence's cell, as they call it. There's nothing to be read into that, folks. Not like the dismal little cell in A Christmas Carol. Okay, it just is what it is. So they're waiting. Juliet turns up and then off they go. It's really interesting, the fact that in the massive, famous love story, that we don't actually see Romeo and Juliet get married. I don't want to spend too much time thinking about that because you don't really need to write about that in the play, in an essay, other than the marriage itself isn't what's important in Shakespeare's focus, because it isn't a happy ever after story, as we know. So we don't need to see that religious joining of the two of them. We just need to know that it's happened, so that when they spend their wedding night together, they're not sinning by spending the night together. It is a legitimate evening's entertainment sanctioned by the rules of religion at that time. Okay, here we go. So smile the heavens upon this holy act, that after hours with sorrow chide us not. Amen, amen. But come, what sorrow can? It cannot countervail the exchange of joy that one short minute gives me in her sight. Do thou but close our hands with holy words, then love-devouring death do what he dare. It is enough, I may but call her mine. These violent delights have violent ends, and in their triumph die like fire and powder, which as they kiss consume. The sweetest honey is loathsome in his own deliciousness, and in the taste confounds the appetite. Therefore love moderately. Long love doth so. Too swift arrives as tardy as too slow. Here comes the lady. Oh, so light of foot will ne'er wear out the everlasting flint. A lover may bestride the gossamer that idles in the wanton summer air, and yet not fall. So light is vanity. Good even to my ghostly confessor. Romeo shall thank thee, daughter, for us both. As much to him else is his thanks too much. Ah, Juliet, if the measure of thy love be heaped like mine, and that thy skill be more to blazon it, then sweeten with thy breath this neighbour air, and let rich music's tongue unfold the imagined happiness that both receive in either by this dear encounter. Conceit, more rich in matter than in words, brags of his substance, not of ornament. They are but beggars that can count their worth. But my true love is grown to such excess, I cannot sum up some of half my wealth. Come, come with me, and we will make short work, for by your leaves you shall not stay alone, till Holy Church incorporate 2 in 1. Okay, if you sat there at the minute thinking, what the heck was all that about? I don't blame you. It's one of those periods in the play, I think, where if you come at it just reading the lines and try to understand what they're saying to each other, it is actually quite difficult. So our job for the rest of today is to get to grips with exactly what is being said here, and there are a few really key lines that you will need to learn as quotes, and you will need to write about in detail. Okay, onward. So, as with some of the other scenes, I've done you a side-by-side modern sort of version, modern take on the words that are being spoken. Where possible, I try and use the words from the speech, but that doesn't always happen. But I'm hoping over the next 3 slides, if you read the text that's in the sort of the beigey magnolia boxes, that scene will make more sense to you. What we're going to focus on today is the foreshadowing that goes on, hence the title of the video, Foreshadowing, because there are a lot of words, lines and ideas included by Shakespeare in this scene, which remind the audience all the way through this scene of the fact that Romeo and Juliet will be dying before the play comes to an end. And originally we are told in the prologue that they will be dead within 2 hours, our 2 hours strife on the stage, and here we are at the end of Act 2. So that death is fast approaching, or those deaths are fast approaching, and Shakespeare is quite unrelenting in his constant reminders in this scene that there is no escape for them and that they are going to die. Lot of foreshadowing, lot of irony in what is being said, and that's what we're going to look at now. But have a read through those magnolia boxes so that you've got a real understanding of what is being spoken by the characters before we go on and look at a few individual quotes in more detail. Okay? Right, time for some writing. I'd like you to write today's date and the title, Foreshadowing in Act 2, Scene 6. I'd then also like you to do a subheading, what is foreshadowing? So subheading, starting writing that in the margin, underline that as well. And then your final task on this page is to write down that definition of foreshadowing. Okay, I spent a while looking for the best definition I could find, and I'm really pleased with this one. Okay, so pause me whilst you do those things, and then I'm going to talk you through that definition about why I think it's a really good definition of foreshadowing. Okay. Okay, so the reason that I really like this definition is because it focuses on the fact that foreshadowing is an indication or a hint. So, for example, the prologue is not foreshadowing. That doesn't hint at the fact that they're going to die or indicate that they might die. That states that they absolutely are. So that is not foreshadowing at all. That is telling us outright, this is what's going to happen. Foreshadowing is using language to create a hint, a subtle suggestion that something bad is going to happen. Okay, and that's why I like this. Foreshadowing is about creating suspense, or the one that I really like, a feeling of unease or a sense of curiosity that something bad is going to happen. Okay, so that's why I like that one. So now we need to look at where we can find foreshadowing in the scene. Right, even though that's quite a short scene, I've given you here 6 examples of foreshadowing from that short scene. What I would like you to do is I would like you to write each quote out, and then around it I would like you please to create a mind map about how each of these quotes foreshadows the deaths of Romeo and Juliet. Some of them you might look at and think, well, I don't really know, but I've given you a tool to help you already because I've given you those modern translations on the screens before this. So I am anticipating that this task will take you about 20 minutes to do if you're doing it properly. That's about 3 minutes to write each quote out and then put your ideas around it. Okay, I'm not going to put a support page in this lesson. I think you, with the modern translation that I've given you and the definition that I've also given you of foreshadowing, where it talks about indicating and hinting, suggesting, it talks about creating tension. We know Romeo and Juliet are going to die. How do each of these quotes remind the audience or the reader that that is how the play ends? How does Shakespeare continually poke at us, remind us, not let us get too carried away in the romance of Romeo and Juliet, because we are constantly aware of the juxtaposition of conflict and love, which is there throughout the play. Okay, so just to recap, write the quote in your book and then around it in a different colour so it stands out really clearly. Jot your ideas down about how this suggests foreshadowing, how it reminds us that death is going to come. And if you're really on form, have a go at putting some subject terminology in there as well. So is it an adjective? Is it a noun? What is it that creates that sense of foreshadowing? Okay, folks? Right, that's it for today's lesson. Make sure you do a good job with that activity, please. See you tomorrow.